Welcome and welcome, parents. Thank you for joining us. You know, all parents want the same thing for their child. They want them to become a significant contributor to society someday. And one of the most important aspects of that process, of course, is learning to read. Now, the experts tell us that no one in the world really actually knows how a child learns to read. If we think back to our own experience, do we really remember how exactly we will learn to read? No. So it's to have so many techniques and ways and strategies to help our child learn to read. So we go to the bookstore and we buy these books for our children and we think that they're going to love them and read them, but it doesn't always happen that way. They don't always take to reading readily. And for some reasons, for many reasons, they're not turned on.
Nuggets for parents. Welcome to our first Read with Child video. This video is the first video in the series of 3 interviews with our expert teacher, Mrs. Pat Kozyra. Today, we present our first topic, the importance of reading with your child, and discuss the stages of reading development.
Right. My book is called Tips and Tidbits for Parents and Teachers. So after 50 years of teaching, I was celebrating my work in the classroom and now sharing it with parents. So I think it's a very important book for all parents to have. Available, of course, from AmazonBooks.com. So we're going to talk about the stages of reading development. In educational circles, you know, we teachers have access to various charts and continuums that help us do this. So we have 5 stages of reading development that really parents should be aware of. So let's look at each of these stages and decide, what stage is my child actually reading at? So, of course, we go to the beginning, and it's called the bookbinding stage. And 90% of this, of course, is the adult reading to the child. And the child is listening intently, etc. The second stage is the chiming in stage. Third stage, cue talk stage. Fourth, guided reading stage. And the 5th most important, of course, going solo stage. Solo means by yourself. So let's look at them in depth now. And I'll try and walk you through each of them, okay?
Yeah, the first stage, stage 1, please.
All right, the bookbinding stage. And the binding of the book itself is sometimes just plastic, or it's made of cloth, or because these, of course, are infants. They're babies that we're reading to. And you know, the experts tell us that it's important to even read to our child before they're born, in the womb. And I know many young parents are onto that nowadays, and this happens a lot. So the books in this first stage, Emily, are shared and they're talked about with the child. The adult is really standing in for the author. And the author's doing all the work by performing and entertaining the child. The child is listening and obviously enjoying, taking it all in, much more than we think the child is doing. Next.
Okay, next stage then is the second stage. It's still a lot of adults, right?
That's right. It's the chiming in stage. The child is now contributing a little bit. The child's helping out the adult through the book. Adult is still, quote, standing in for the author. The child is listening intently, watching the pictures, maybe even making some verbal responses and some reactions that tell us that the child is enjoying it or understanding it, or even would like to participate a little bit more. Helping to turn the page is really significant. How does that child know when to turn the page? That tells us a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the turning the page is important as well. It means they are reading with you. The first stage.
Third stage, cue talk stage. 60% by the adult. Now we have 40% for the child. So the child is joining in a little bit more now. Demonstration and explicit discussion of cueing strategies. The child finishes maybe the last word of the sentence. The adult leaves it out. Child tries to fill it in. Or the child can say, what's a word to rhyme with cow? And the child might say, how? Then when the
Nice.
story's
Yeah.
finished, the child might answer your how question or your why question. So it gets the child thinking, it gets the child involved, and we know then how much the child is understanding.
Yeah, I think asking questions is very important in between that to make sure they understand. Yeah.
Good point, Emily.
Okay, the next stage will be the fourth. Yeah, more on the child.
This is guided reading, so we're guiding the child, helping him to read or her to read. 60% adult, 40% child. The adult continues to help the child. The child takes on now more responsibility, standing in for the author, and becomes the co-author.
Right. Yeah, I think then it's leading to the final stage.
And here we have the going solo stage where the child really is trying to read independently. 95% by the child, only 5% by the adult. The child is trying to be an independent reader, reading by himself. Okay.
Right. Okay, and there are some things that you would like to remind us about the reading, right? What the words they need to know.
Yes, in the beginning stages, Emily, we cannot really expect the child to learn to read if they don't have these 10 words under their belt, so to speak. And they're really sight words they just have to know by us using them with the child. They know them from us speaking these words. The, of, and, to, in, is, you, that, it. If they don't have a command of these words, it makes it difficult for them to understand the sentence grammatically, because if these words are not in the sentence, it can even change the meaning of the sentence.
Yeah, I think that it's important that they know few words and then they can correct what the passage is and understanding you. And then it sounds simple words for adults, but actually I think going to solo is not so easy. And how will you know which stage actually the child is at and which levels of books he or she should be moving to? Is there any instruction thing?
Right. So we've learned how to judge a book's difficulty by just listening to the child read orally. And so if your child is reading, let's take a segment of 20 words. In that segment of 20 words, if your child gets through it with no errors, reading perfectly, we call that child an independent reader. They're reading at an independent level, which means they could even go on to a more difficult book. And that is good. Now, if the child makes one mistake in that 20 words, we say the child is reading at an instructional level. So that means he's just where he should be, right where he should be. And no need to move on or to use simpler books. But if we find that the child in those 20 words is getting 2 or more words incorrect and does not know them, then we call this the frustration level. And yes, the child is frustrated. So it calls for a more simple book. And we don't want to cause undue stress. Why put the child into a book that they cannot read, that is difficult for them?
So if we read more difficult books, so does it mean that we have to go back to the earlier stage, or which stage it should be? For some reasons or many reasons that we can't go back to an easier book, right? And the school may insist on this level. So what should we do?
Well, that's right, Emily. We can't always go to a simple book if this is the book they're studying right now in the classroom. But and so for that, of course, we can help them in several ways. Now, just even helping them to read, you can go to the library and get audiobooks where the child reads the page silently to himself, but the words are orally, auditorily spoken on a CD or some kind of list. One good example is how parents think their child should be reading Harry Potter, and it's so difficult for them to read. It would be good for the parent to read that book or get one of these audio tapes and just listen to it. Expecting or even guessing what comes next. We call that context clues. Knowing what becomes before and what becomes after, and that helps us to understand the word or to connect or to decipher it. So that's another thing. Then, of course, every home has dictionaries and a thesaurus. A thesaurus is a book that has synonyms that can be used to understand the different words as well. And added to that, of course, the assistance from parents and helpers or older siblings, which I really, really advise. Always good for older brother or sister to help with the reading. They can sound out the word for the child using phonetics, or they can just say the word, tell the child what it is, or even tell the child what the word means. Right. Here again, repetition, repetition, repetition. Just doing it over and over helps you to learn it better.
Right. Actually, I think that you remind me, don't ask the children or the child to read a dictionary or memorize words from dictionary. It's just checking, right?
Exactly. Yeah, never do that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pat, for your coaching. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you to the parents for joining us, and we hope that this has been helpful in helping your child to learn to read. Bye for now. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.